The scripture is taken from Matthew chapter 5, verse 4. Blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. We mourn many types of losses, do we not? Loved ones and pets who cross over, phases of life that come to an end, our childhoods or young adulthoods, the time we first became parents or grandparents, milestones in our careers, relationships that end, or dreams that did not come to pass. On a group level, we may mourn the area where we were raised, forever changed by new development, or lose a sense of family, community, even a part of our own identity. These are all loved ones. Here in the DC area, many work with the government in politics, public service, addressing national, international, global issues, climate change, civil rights. We see the waves of karma, cause and effect, at the group level, moving and adapting as eras come to an end and new ones begin. Much like we do individually or within our families or circles of friends when someone makes their transition. There are many approaches to grief counseling, guides to processing the emotions of anger, loss, denial, fear, and finally, acceptance. There are also many spiritual teachings regarding the end of a cycle and the transition of an individual or person or to the spirit realms. When I looked up the phrase good grief, the first thing that came up was Charlie Brown or other Peanuts character saying, good grief, Charlie Brown. So you'll see that's what we have on our bulletin today. Another was that good grief came from the expression good God. God, 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 there is not else but God. These ideas form the basis for our service today. Good God, indeed. How do we acknowledge our grief and move through it? How can we make good from something that feels so terrible at times? Today, we are focusing on the 10,000-foot view of the soul's progression and the glimpses of that we can acknowledge and gain strength from even as we move through these concurrent physical and emotional processes of our earthly existence and the processing of these grievous losses. Not to deny or repress our emotions, but to help us get through them, knowing that we will grow, heal, and can choose to take these difficulties and channel the energy to fuel our progression individually and on a group level, to heal, to help, to serve others here and in the hereafter. To quote Emanuel Swedenborg, who lived in the late 1600s and was an early influencer to the spiritualist movement, he says, we are not people because of our bodies, but because of our spirits. Death means resurrection and a continuation of life. Spiritualists believed in an afterlife, and in fact, many, many levels of afterlife and progression through continued learning and service. However, they did not believe in reincarnation, but many others and faiths and metaphysicians do. Hinduism, Buddhism, the Kabbalah teach that reincarnation occurs for the soul to learn various lessons, to progress and reach enlightenment. During times of grief and mourning, we can also reflect on the idea of detachment as expressed in Buddhist teachings. We know these things and sense them, but what about the void that is created by the loss? Most of us struggle when we feel the loss of our loved ones. As metaphysicians, we wonder why. Why didn't we know they were leaving us? Why do we feel such a range of emotions and miss their presence here on earth? Remember, We are spirits having a human experience. The soul's progression is paramount. Learning to survive these difficulties and transform them to transcend our current levels of understanding is a part of our journey. To help keep us on track, I was inspired to follow an acronym for grief that I was given to help guide and inspire us. So G stands for grace and also moves toward gratitude. What do I mean by this? The initial shock can be so great, yet Spirit provides us with signs and kindnesses. In the stillness of our innermost being, we find the strength to go on and to face our emotions. Often, Spirit is working with us so closely, we feel as though we are suspended in time, space, reality. Some people have been helping loved ones through a long, difficult illness, perhaps, a slow, steady decline, and they feel the grace of a release, a sense of knowing that their departed loved one is in a better place. Sometimes the loss is sudden, such as a friend I know who had brought her husband home from a routine rotator cuff surgery. They decided to go to the beach for a long weekend to relax. She packed their bags while he was resting comfortably in the bed. And then after a time, she went to check on him and he was unresponsive. When she told me about the experience, I thought she would be devastated, especially by the shock of his sudden passing at the age of 51. What was that like, I wondered. Oh, but he looked so peaceful, she said adoringly. She told me that she knew he was gone when her friend in the adjacent room called an ambulance immediately. She missed him so much as time went on and questioned her psychic abilities. How could she not know this was coming? But the grace she recalled of seeing him as he transitioned and the gratitude for the happy years they had together helped her through. Many people see birds, animals, some see the spirit leaving the body, or witness electronics flashing other signs within the first few moments, hours, or days that a person passes over. These symbols bring instant knowledge, comfort, and peace, and they stay with us. An instantaneous grace that permeates our entire being that we extend to others who are also grieving, allowing us to bring comfort in the midst of our grief and over again as we cycle through periods of healing, release, and renewal. We may also learn to forgive them and ourselves. As we experience moments of grace, we attune to the gratitude we have in our hearts for knowing our loved ones and the experiences that we shared. This can also remind us of other life experiences, such as the phrase to age gracefully, when mourning the passing of time in our present incarnation. When we are mindful, we can move from grace to gratitude. This brings us to the next phase of R for reflection to realization. As we continue to work through our grief, some of the initial shine of the grace that was so freely flowing through us may begin to fade. We become more aware of the depths of our loss, the reality of life without the physical presence of our loved one. We may experience deeper feelings of sadness, anger, disappointment at dreams that must now be forfeited or changed to meet our new circumstances. When we can remember to think about the grace and the gratitude we feel for the time we spent with our loved ones or going through life phases that have come to completion, we can reflect more deeply upon the lessons we learned and the good experiences we had. Eventually, we come to a new realization about where we have been and where we want to go next in our lives. We can sense a new longing deep within us to fill a void, not to replace our loved ones, but to honor them where they are, take what we have learned, and direct our actions toward new heights and dreams. As we reflect, we experience a deep realization of all they meant to us. We feel a firm resolve growing inside us to honor and to love them, knowing they exist and will always be with us. This can also apply to our sense of loss of life as we once knew it. For easier times gone by, maybe life without cell phones, online ordering and big box stores, or before the pandemic. Life as a youngster or a teen or an apprentice early on in our careers. We realize where we are in life and that we need to adapt as we move forward. But how? This leads us to introspection and to illumination. Most of us experience grief in waves or cycles. We may also tend to isolate, which need not necessarily be a bad thing, but we don't want to get stuck there or prolong it. We don't want to get frozen, in other words. Spending more time alone may be exactly what we need to recover from the shock and provide a safe place to plumb the depths of our new awareness as it slowly emerges from our initial reflections. Like the heron standing in pools of water and emotion, we fish and delve deeper. We pass through the reflection and realization of how much we love and appreciated our loved ones, including who we were in their presence and earlier versions of ourselves, our communities, our planet, and the universe. We often go deeper into reflection, especially during recent times with the pandemic, and begin a true process of introspection. We can tap into the deepest parts of our hearts, our souls, building on what we have realized until we begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Our grief, as searing as it can be, is destroying old thoughts and patterns, beliefs about ourselves and others. We're learning to forgive, to survive the unthinkable, the unknowable, and emerging as illumined beings. We see the light. We are illumined. The stars are shining. Our loved ones live on. We may be communing with them in our dreams. They may be sending messages or speaking to us through others. Like the Kabbalists teach us, there's a shard of light hidden under every darkness. We have found that shard and brought it to light, illuminated the darkness of our saddest moments, transformed with grace, gratitude, reflection, and realization. The light shines for all. In the words of Jerry Garcia, who I'm mentioning in honor of my dear brother, Doug, once in a while we get shown the light in the strangest of places, if we look at it right. That brings us to E, which first came to me as evergreen, and then to everlasting love. So when I first received the E for evergreen, I was reminded of how important it is to keep it green, to release the old and bring in the new, allow new shoots to grow, new buds to form. What is more evergreen than everlasting love? And of course, the Christmas tree that Reverend Sass was probably thinking about when she wrote the hymn that we adapted for today. The truth of the eternal, the unchanging truths, the joy, the peace, the appreciation for all that we are and can become. We remember this and feel more alive. We move from survival to thriving mode. We give ourselves permission to exist again, to eat our favorite foods, to engage more fully in the physical world we are still a part of. We understand that the love we share is everlasting. The love that we share is everlasting, not the loss. Many years ago, I went to Roanoke with my husband at the time to the United Metaphysical Church's campus there. We went for work weekends and retreats for what the Buddhists would probably call sanctuary. If you've never been, it was a beautiful grounds there in nature. A difficult marriage that it was, though, which did not survive after many separations and attempts to reconcile. Nevertheless, I was heartbroken when my then ex-husband suddenly made his transition about 7 years ago. On the drive to Roanoke for my first weekend at seminary a few years later, I could feel his presence around me. I stopped along the way and I saw signs from him everywhere. The little pilot gas stations, a place we would stop, and we looked at they had little trinkets. I collect miniatures, and there was like a little glass red rose. And I just felt him, and I was just so moved by it. I was almost moved to tears. I kept driving, not sure if I was making the right decision by enrolling in this program or by going there, if it was going to be so difficult. As I neared the campus, I literally felt him pinch me in the ribs. You know, a man's touch when you've been married to him for 10 years. And it was like, wow, that really got my attention. I knew he was there, literally egging me on. Giddy up, gal, get on with it. And during one of my first message bearing services there, I was on the platform preparing to serve as the message hymn was being sung. As I was being called to stand there and give the messages, he appeared to me with a red rose in his hand, bringing tears to my eyes. He was apologizing and showing me everlasting love in a beautiful gesture that was hard to put into words as he held the rose out to me. I knew that our love survived and would always live on, despite our challenges here on earth. So this knowledge strengthened my foundation. A foundation for learning, living, loving more completely, truthfully, and honestly. As we rise like a phoenix from the ashes of our grieving process, we create a stronger foundation for living more purposefully on our soul's path. Our capacity for love intensifies and expands, overcoming the greatest fear of all, that we will lose those whom we love the most. We've not only survived, but we have thrived. By going down, down, down into the depths of the pain and the loss, we find new strength, new ideas, new courage for living, loving, and forgiving. Understanding our true nature and our true purpose, we have honed our understanding of holding on and letting go. Our firm bedrock of spiritual life, trust in spirit and ourselves, to create an even lighter, brighter, and love-filled adventure on this beautiful orb that we call planet Earth, with our spirits fueling the ever-evolving consciousness of mindful living. From grace to gratitude, reflection to realization, introspection to illumination, evergreen to everlasting, eternal love, foundations for healthy, abundant living. Good grief indeed.